What's going on, No Nation? CJ Wilson here with DoakTalk, here to bring you guys another episode of Behind Enemy Lines. I have a special edition for this one. FSU is playing against the SMU Mustangs in their first ACC game, and also it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be on the road in Dallas, and here I have Jordan Hofeditz. He is the sports writer for SMU Athletics. Jordan, how's it going?
It's good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. It's been real busy. Like I was kind of telling you pre-show, a lot of football going on for me as middle school football, but definitely excited to talk to you and hear a little bit more about SMU as you guys are new to, the ACC. We're kind of familiar with the head coach and Rhett Lashley, who was the offensive coordinator for Miami. High-powered offense. A lot of fireworks from what I saw at Miami, and it's kind of carrying over to SMU. Just speak about Rhett and the job he's done thus far at SMU.
What he's been able to come in and do has been really impressive. I think as much as SMU fans don't like to, you do have to give Sonny Dykes some credit for some things he established and some things he got going. And Rhett, started on that staff as an offensive coordinator before going to Miami. And in his return to SMU, he's just kind of picked that up. I think first year was maybe a little disappointing. But to go out, win the conference last year, and then obviously all the excitement surrounding joining the ACC, he and his staff have done a good job of putting together a roster that they feel like can compete in this conference. Has quite a few former ACC players on other teams on it. And I think after, some lackluster performances the first 3 weeks, coming off that big win against TCU, he got that monkey off his back. I think things are really headed in the right direction for him right now.
Yeah, you guys scored over 60 against TCU, which was very impressive. Kind of scared me a little bit leading up into this week. But before we jump into it, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. It does us a world of favors. Pushes this info out to like-minded Noles fans. Heck, even some SMU fans that want to get some information about Florida State about the game. I'm pretty sure they'll be searching and things like that, trying to get some background information as well. So go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel. It does a world of favors. All right, let's jump right into it. So as far as the quarterback position, Kevin Jennings is the starting quarterback. Just talk about what he brings to the table and what Rhett Lashley wants to do with him at the quarterback position.
Kevin, all he's done, his entire career is come into big games and make big plays. He won the first state championship for a Dallas public school in 50 or 60 years. Then last year started the American Conference Championship game that won SMU its first conference title in 40 years. Really strong arm. He can throw almost any pass you want him to throw. He's got the ability to extend plays with his legs until he can find a receiver. He's also more than willing to take off with the ball. It was an interesting offseason with, Preston breaking his leg at the end of last year, missing spring. So Kevin got the conference championship game and bowl start and got to be the guy during spring. Preston came back and was named the starter, but Kevin still played a pretty significant amount those first 3 games. So it's kind of been an interesting thing up until last week when Kevin was named the guy and played up until the last series when they were kind of running out the last bit of the clock last week.
Let's move on to the running back. Real question: do you think? I guess you say he was named the guy. You don't foresee a system in which Rhett plays both quarterbacks within this game?
I don't think so. That's what they did the first 3 games. Is Preston had the first 2 series, then Kevin had the next 2. Preston would come back, and then they'd kind of figure things out from there. The opener against Nevada, they did that. Preston ended up playing the whole second half. Had a nice fourth quarter to help them come back and win that game. The HCU game you can kind of throw out the window because they were going to be able to do enough that both were going to play a bunch anyway. But the BYU game was telling. I think Preston played 3 series total. Kevin played almost the entire second half. It was then after that game that he was named the starter. I think some of their issues on offense were not having a guy. So I really don't see them kind of switching things out unless something happens to Kevin or they're just some of those issues maybe come back with the offense. But I think Kevin's the guy moving forward from here on out.
Perfect. FSU has had their struggles with quarterbacks that can run the football, so it's going to be interesting, how that dynamic plays out. Let's move on to the running back room, and this is a name that caught my attention, a familiar name, Rashard Smith, transfer from Miami, really electric guy with the ball in his hands. Let's talk about the running back room and what they bring to the table.
Well, it's an interesting situation. They've got two guys that are out for the season at this point. Kamar Wheaton, who transferred from Alabama 2 years ago, hurt his knee like 2 days into fall camp, had surgery, is out for the season, and now another different former Miami running back, Jalen Knighton, got injured on the last play of the BYU game. Coach Lashley confirmed that he's now out for the season. So really the addition of Rashard Smith has been huge. He played wide receiver at Miami. They're using him at running back, and he really seems to be picking it up well. When asked about that transition, had a great quote about, I just consider myself a football player, so I don't care if you throw me the ball or hand it to me. I'm going to do something with it. Then behind him, you've got LJ Johnson, who got a little banged up at the end of the TCU game. He's kind of day-to-day right now, but he kind of gives you that power back option a little bit. If he's unable to go, they'll be turning to a true freshman in Derek McFall. Really like him. I think he's got a ton of talent and is going to be a really good back. Only problem is he's a true freshman, only had a small handful of carries so far in his career. Another thing they'll do is one of their slot receivers, Roderick Daniels Jr., they'll move him into the backfield if they need to. But a lot is going to be put on Smith's shoulders. He showed he can handle it against TCU. I think he's got to be a big part of the offense again this week.
Perfect. Let's move on to the pass catchers and what they bring to the table. And I say pass catchers, not just receivers only, because you guys have a tight end that's pretty electric and RJ Maryland. So let's talk about the pass catchers as a whole and what they bring to the table for the SMU Mustangs as well.
They've got a lot of options, and sometimes a lot of fans have seen that as maybe part of the problem, is that they don't necessarily have that elite guy, that go-to guy. RJ Maryland from the tight end position has been that guy at times. Son of a Super Bowl champion with the Dallas Cowboys, former number 1 overall pick. So he's got the pedigree. He has done a great job. Really was more wide receiver than tight end in high school. He's done a great job learning the position, getting his body bigger, stronger to play the position and not just be a pass catcher. He's a big part of it. You'll see any number of guys. They've got Jordan Hudson, Keyshawn Smith, and Romello Brinson, both from Miami. Moochie Dixon is another. Those are their top 4 outside guys that I think they would really like somebody to be a go-to guy for them. But right now, until that happens, they're pretty okay kind of rotating those guys around. And then, like I said, Roderick Daniels, if they don't line him up in the backfield, he'll line up in the slot along with Jake Bailey, who last year was their leading receiver in both catches and yards, but didn't have a touchdown. He's already remedied that this year with a touchdown, but he's a nice go-to guy that they like to go to on third down. Offense, Rhett trusts him with play calls. Preston trusted him, and Kevin trusts him as a guy that if they get the ball around him, he'll be able to make a play with it.
Speak about the offensive line and what they bring to the table. Coming into the ACC, trench play defensive line is very key for certain teams. FSU is starting to get their footing in regards to playing well on the defensive line. So let's talk about what SMU has in store for us within the offensive line room going into this Florida State game.
The biggest thing with the offensive line is I think they now have it solidified. They brought in Andrew Chamblee from Arkansas this offseason, and he was another one that got hurt kind of early on in fall camp. But he's back in the fold now, and that's allowed them to really put their best guys at their best positions. Logan Parr, their left guard, he was their highest rated player on Madden. I think 91 is what he ended up being. He's a guy that came in last year and weren't really sure where he was going to fit in, and really just took over that spot for them from the beginning. Another former Miami guy in Ja'Kai Clark at center, started a ton of games there at Miami. He's kind of fit into that spot well for them. Possibly their best offensive lineman is Justin Osborne. They tried him at center early in the season. They then had to move him to tackle with some injuries, and now he's really back at his best position at that right guard spot. And then PJ Williams is a guy who at the end of last year really earned a starting role, and he's a guy that they talked about all fall camp, really matured, really kind of came into his own a little bit, but I still think needed maybe a couple weeks to get his feet under him to kind of have those expectations. But I think a lot of that was really solidified in that TCU game where you really saw their best five out there the most of the time. And that made a big difference for this offense. And it looks like that'll carry over with those top five guys with a couple others rotating in for this one.
All right, let's transition over to the defense and the defensive side of the defensive side of the line. Rather, you have Isaiah Smith and Jared Harrison Hunt, two guys that have been standing out for SMU thus far within the season. Speak about the defensive line room and how they plan to attack FSU within.
I think the biggest thing for the defensive line is its depth. I think they're really comfortable going 2 to 3 deep at pretty much every position. They're really deep on the inside. They're likely start three former Miami guys. So you've got guys that have played in the ACC before. Elijah Roberts had double-digit sacks last year. You just mentioned Harrison Hunt. They added this year to the interior with a veteran guy. And then they also added Jafari Harvey, who's already made a couple big plays for them. I just think that the depth is what gives them the chance to do a lot of things. They have no problem rotating, a full four if they have to. They like to move guys around. Roberts is a true, defensive end, but they'll move them inside on third downs to really give two guys on the edge some different looks and to give him an opportunity to try to do something up the middle. So, Coach Thibodeau's done a great job with that group of bringing guys in, developing them. A guy like Tank Booker, who is just a massive human being that's really been able to transition and using his size really well and really being a problem in the middle.
All right, so you got two guys behind the defensive line that's been standing out so far, and Kobe Wilson and Ahmad Walker. Two leaders on the defensive side from the linebacker position. Just talk about what those guys bring to the table for SMU as well.
The biggest thing that linebacker Coach Crum talks about with them is just a hunger. Like they're just never satisfied. Ahmad Walker's a guy that played in this defense back when Coach Simons was at Liberty, so he's got a real good feel for it. Came in last year, 2 years ago, and was able to do some things for this defense that added some stability, some leadership. And then Kobe Wilson did the same thing, being a new guy to the defense and, played at Temple and wasn't really sure where he was going to fit in. And he just immediately earned his spot. He's a captain this year, has been a real big energy guy for them, had a big forced fumble and fumble recovery for them already this season. And then they've got a guy who's a sophomore in Alexander Kilgore, played last year as a true freshman, and is just a really talented athlete who knows the position and is growing into the position really well.
Jordan, talk about the secondary for a little bit, and you guys do have a ball hawk in Ahmad Moses who has 3 interceptions thus far on this young season. Just talk about the secondary and what type of opportunities they try to, make within the secondary to make it tough on the receivers and quarterbacks.
The biggest thing is their safety unit that Moses is a part of is a really veteran group. They returned five guys that started at least one game last season. It allowed them actually to move one of them and Brandon Crossley to corner, where they were a little thin on bodies. But yeah, Ahmad's been great. Had 2 interceptions last week. The first 2 that the TCU quarterback has thrown all season. Returned one of them for a touchdown. They've got Jonathan McGill, who's from the area but started his career at Stanford. Just a smart player. Honestly, if he was probably a little bit bigger, he probably would have left for the NFL after last year, but came back again, a guy with something to prove. Isaiah Wacobia, he wears the number 23. It's his second year wearing it. SMU honors Jerry Levias, the first black scholarship player in the Southwest Conference, by awarding that jersey to a player. And he's been great, was the player of the game in the conference championship game last year. So that safety unit is really strong. It's the corners that were a little bit of a question mark coming into the season and have done kind of the basic job that they've needed to do. I think they'd still like someone, one or two, to step up and really kind of be an every down guy. You know, right now they're really rotating Crossley. They've got Deuce Harmon, Jalen Davis Robinson, and AJ Davis that are really their top 4 guys. And I think Coach Hundley would like if he could get that rotation down to 3 and really have it be 2 guys that one kind of goes in for to spell them every now and again. But I think that's probably the biggest part of this defense is just getting those cornerbacks just to raise that level up a little bit, and then you can start talking about this maybe being an elite defense.
Doesn't sound good for FSU, with the offense has been struggling pretty mightily as of late. All right, Jordan, give me some of your keys to victory for SMU. What are some things you feel like they have to do in order to be successful? Some things you feel like they should avoid in this game?
The biggest thing, I think they've got to take what they did against TCU, which was run the ball. They were run first. You know, Coach Lashley talked after the game. They kind of expected at some point TCU to come down and load the box, and then they'd, try to take some shots over them. They never did that, so they just kept running the ball, and they were able to do it at a high level. Richard ran for 7 yards a carry. LJ, before he got hurt, was at 7 yards a carry. I think that's something I think they're just going to kind of have to pound the ball a little bit and then take those shots when they can. I think defensively, I think it's going to come down to the corners. I think when you've got an offense and a quarterback that have been struggling, I think the worst thing they could do is to give up a big play or two and give that offense some hope and some belief again, and kind of let them get in rhythm. And then I think the defensive line just has to make things tough. I think that's going to be a key to winning this football game, and whether that's stopping the run or making DJU really uncomfortable back there. I think this defensive line is an elite part of this defense and this team as a whole, and they can make things pretty uncomfortable for quarterbacks, and I think that'll be a big key for them to get a victory.
All right, Jordan, I want to put you on the spot here a little bit. Give me your score prediction for this game.
I think it would be a little much to ask 66 points again, especially considering 2 were defensive and 1 was on special teams. But I think what you saw from the offense that scored 5 touchdowns of its own is that if you can get Brashard Smith the ball, if Kevin can hold on to the ball and make some plays here and there when he's asked to do so, it's an offense that can score points. It's an offense that is traditionally, like you said, scored points under Coach Lashley. I think you're looking at, if the defense can kind of continue to make things tough on the Florida State offense, I think there's a really good chance that with a home crowd behind them that's been really great all season, I think you've got a chance to come out of this 38-24 in that kind of realm of score.
I hope you're absolutely wrong, Jordan. I hope you're absolutely wrong. But I do think it's It's going to be tough because this FSU offense is averaging 15 on the season. I think it's 12, 13, and 14. It's the last three. It's which last three games is which the points that they scored. But the defense and defensive line is starting to play a lot better and starting to become, I guess, the defensive line that everyone was talking about preseason and things of that nature. So I'm gonna go. I'm probably being a little homer here, but give me 21-20. I don't know how in the hell FSU is going to score 20 points, but give me 21 points rather. Give me 21-20 FSU. But I would not be surprised if SMU does have an explosive day on offense, and FSU, due to that, defense being on the field a lot, offense not really getting any type of production, and defense just tiring out and SMU doing their thing. So I think it's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be the first ACC game for SMU, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be a really electric atmosphere. And Jordan, appreciate you hanging out with me. Let the people know where they can find you at.
Twitter, Instagram. I do some photos too. So at J Hofeditz on both, and then my stories show up on the SMUMustangs.com on the team's website.
Perfect. Really appreciate you hanging out. Again, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. We'll have a recap of the game coming soon. Go Noles.